Hello friends and welcome to another video. I'm Das Food and today we are going to be taking a look at Moris. This was an idea that was suggested to me in the comments in my previous video and I thought, sure, this will be fun. I mean, after all, who doesn't like Moris? Honestly, I know that some people are going to be out there and say, oh, I don't really care for them, but come on, man. I've seen the views. I've seen the views on the videos where whenever a new killer comes out, you get those videos of this character's Mori on every survivor, and those videos do gangbusters. They get so many views, and I don't blame you because Moris are cool. There's so many things that can be subjective or objective or whatever you want to call it, but everybody should just be able to come together and say, you know what, Moris are pretty cool. Moris used to be extremely powerful, but nowadays they're more just a cool way to send somebody out of the game. So you have to have them on their death hook. They have to have been hooked twice or otherwise reached the struggle stage on the hook. And basically, the only practical use of a Mori these days is that it can keep you from having to eat a decisive strike. Outside of that, you're really not looking at much in the way of practicality. I mean, I guess, look, maybe you can avoid a flashlight save or something like that, but you get the point. In terms of practicality, they're nowhere near as useful as they used to be. So now, for me personally, I want to get Mori'd. If I am in a position to get Mori'd, I was going to die anyway, and if I'm on my way out of the game, if I'm leaving that trial, I want to go out in a blaze of glory, not on a hook as a giant spider monster devours me. So I am huge on Moris, and I'm very excited to rank these. Now, I've broken these rankings into 5 sections. Some of these sections are larger than others, some are actually rather small, but I didn't just want to lump things in willy-nilly, so I thought it would be fun to actually break them up into different ones. And these categories are bad, subpar, mediocre, good, and great. And I tried to be really hard on these. I tried to really go through and apply a critical eye to all of them. Now, if you're here and you haven't seen every Mori, don't you worry about it. We're going to play footage from every single Mori. And that actually brings me to an important aspect of this. I want to give a massive thanks to Jabsy and Michaela, who both helped me get the footage for this, because obviously I could have gone out and played games and tried to get Moris naturally, or we could just hop in custom games and get them in about, roughly all things considered, it took us about an hour's time, a little under that, but I do want to thank them both. I'll put a link in the channel description below, and the video description below, excuse me, for Michaela's channel. I know a lot of you are probably not going to have much crossover appeal for it, but she does do life and beauty videos, so if you might be interested in those, go check that out. Jabsy doesn't have a video of any kind out there. He doesn't have a channel, so just special thanks to him for letting me get this footage. Nothing to plug, but he was really cool for helping me with that. As always, before we get going, I do want to remind you, if you like the video, please do leave a like. If you really enjoy several of my videos, hey, maybe subscribe. It's a good time here. Also, please do let me know in the comments below why you disagree with me, because I can promise you, there are going to be quite a few of these that you either disagree with or that you can at least say, wow, I haven't seen many people rank them like this before. Because look, I'm not just going with pack mentality here. I'm going strictly off of how I feel about these Moris. I did not take into account the popularity or anything like that for any of them. So with all of that out of the way, let's get into it and start with the bad category, which begins with number 27, the Trapper. And in the case of the Trapper, I hate to do it, but I have to give his Mori an F. This one is horribly bland. The strikes don't even look that painful until the very last one. And the big criticism that I think you're going to hear anybody who sees this Mori bring up is that Trapper doesn't use a bear trap in his Mori, which is just absolutely astonishing. I can sort of understand that, hey, when the game launched, maybe they didn't have the resources to, maybe there were just so many things to take care of. They didn't want to spend time coming up with a massive, intricate Mori for him or whatever. But nowadays, I think that would be such an easy thing to do. I know I'm not a coder, so, if I am wrong, let me know. But I can't imagine you're talking about more than a very small team just getting the mocap down and then, working its way into the game. And you could have a really cool Mori for him. But as it stands, his is terrible. And by the way, I didn't mention this. My general criteria, though it is admittedly a little flexible, is I am looking for uniqueness. I am looking for something that is character accurate, and I'm looking for that wow factor, that cool factor. So those are the 3 things I'm looking for in just about every Mori. And in the case of Trapper, it's not character accurate. It certainly doesn't have wow factor. And as far as uniqueness, I mean, he's just kind of slapping them with his weapon. That's maybe unique in a very bad way. In fact, the only one that it's kind of similar to is going to be the very next one on this thing. But I promised you I was going to show you each Mori, so here's Trapper's. At 26, we have the Wraith, who gets a D- here. In the case of the Wraith, I do like the little leg pull he does. I like that he pulls the survivor back to him, which adds a little bit of character to it, but overall, I would say there's very little personality on display here. And obviously, there's really nothing in this that says, oh, that's obviously going to be the Wraith. He doesn't use the bell. He doesn't pull out a spine Predator style. He doesn't really do anything that's very Wraith-like. He doesn't use his invisibility. There's just really nothing here that is extremely notable. In fact, the most notable thing I would give it would be that leg pull, which is good, but then also how overly stiff the strikes look. They're just, it just looks like it's his first time swinging the weapon, and it's not very good. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like this one could have been a lot better as well, and all three of them that are in the bad category really need a rework as soon as possible. But as promised, here's the Wraith's Mori. Rounding out the terrible bad, no good, very bad category, we have number 25, the Pig, who doesn't get the F or the D- of Trapper and Wraith respectively, but I still just give her a D on this one because it is not a very inspiring Mori. So in the case of the Pig, it's not Trapper or Wraith bad, but it is really nothing special. I can't really look to this one and say, oh, well look, this one earns its weight because of this one thing. It's about as far from lore accurate as possible. I mean, you've watched the Saw movies. I would imagine at least most people watching this video have seen a Saw movie, a part of the Saw movies. Since when did anybody related to Jigsaw handle things this quickly? And I realize, by the way, before anyone says it, I realize you can't very well have Pig put them in a death trap for the Mori that takes forever and they gotta, I get that. They had to go for some kind of expediency, but I really don't think this was the solution. The only thing I will give it credit for, and the reason that I do put it ahead of Wraith and Trapper, is the way that the survivor blocks the first blow, and then Amanda seems a little angry as she slashes their throats. That's good. She was a very angry character, and to include her temper in here a little bit is actually a pretty nice touch. I don't know if that was intentional, but if it was, they did a good job on that. And from the 3 in the bad category, we now move into the 5 in the subpar category. Now, what is subpar? Subpar would mean it's not quite middle of the road. It's a little skewing towards bad, but it's not outright terrible. And these are not ones that I think they have to rework as soon as possible. These are ones they can leave in the game. They just didn't really work for me personally. And I think this is where I'm going to first lose people because I think that some of these are more popular than they deserve to be. And if you love these, by the way, as is always the case with my videos, I love discourse. I love people talking. So if you disagree, let me know, but let's be polite about it. Let's talk about it. Tell me why you like the ones I dislike, and we can have a fun conversation on it. I do tend to reply to comments. So with that being said, let's get into it and start with the non-controversial one. Number 24, the Hillbilly. I gave him a C-. This one is definitely better than the 3 that came before it, and oh man, I was so tempted to put it a little higher because I do think it's better than it gets credit for. People tend to put it with Wraith and Trapper, but the Hillbillies is not as bad. It's not as bad of a Mori. The simple brutality of it actually works pretty well. I love the foot on the back, the chainsaw through the shoulder blade. I love that he seems to stop to admire his work, almost Michael Myers-like in that way. It's not terrible in those regards, but at the end of the day, it's hurt by 2 things. One thing, it is extremely quick and simple, so there's just really not a lot to sink our teeth into with this one. And then also, I talked about uniqueness being a big deal for me. Uniqueness is important, and no matter what, this is always going to be the second best chainsaw kill in the game, so that's going to knock it down a few pegs. But as is always the case, we will now show you the Hillbilly's Mori. Coming in at number 23, we have a fan favorite, I would presume. At least I know the character is a fan favorite. I don't know how the Mori will fare, but it's the Huntress, who I also gave not a C-. I'm sorry, I gave her a C. And in the case of the Huntress, she was the first one chronologically to use extreme brutality in her Mori. And, you know, you're going to see this as a theme for me. I don't think that brutality equates to entertainment. I don't think that just because something is excessively aggressive, it is automatically better. And in the case of the Huntresses, I actually think the extreme brutality hurts, because the first time she lodges that axe into the survivor's skull is gnarly. That is a really cool visual. And I love that she has to kick them to get them off of it because it's so deep in their skull. That's a cool detail. But then the tantrum-like swings to the chest. I realize people are going to say that's because it's the Huntress and she's immature. I get that. I can accept that. But as far as the actual, I guess, flow of the Mori, it just kind of ruins it. And I would have rather something, I guess, a little more subdued towards the end, because the start was great. I don't know, maybe hypothetically, just spitballing here, what if she threw a hatchet to pin their leg to the ground or something, and then she hit them in the forehead with the axe? Something like that would be a really cool change, but overall, it gets a C from me. It's not terrible, it's just subpar. Here's the Mori. Coming in at number 22, getting another C, we have the Hag. So this one is so over the top. And to me, it's a little too over the top. It's so over the top that it loses a lot of its effectiveness. It's kind of like, so what I would like in some of these Moris too, with their use of violence, is think about the kid who never speaks in class. When he speaks, or she speaks, or whatever, you're like, wow, that's a big deal. This person just said something. But then you think about the kids like me, the ones that never stop talking. You know, at some point you just kind of start zoning them out. For me, violence in video games works the same way, where the more excessive it is, the more that I just kind of tune it out, and I'm just not that impressed by it. So that's what the Hag does for me. It's just kind of something that loses me. Now, with that being said, I actually like that she seems to be biting them on the neck. That's a good detail. I mean, that would be an effective way to try to bleed somebody out and get that kill. I also like that you get to see that animalistic nature of the Hag. Very, very cool. Very big fan of that. And lastly, I like that they created, though it probably wasn't a big deal, I like that they created an additional asset so you actually get to see the survivor's insides. That's kind of cool. So overall, the Hag does not have a terrible Mori, but there are definitely a lot better out there. But here it is. Coming in at number 21, we have what I think will be the first controversial one, and that is the Blight getting a C+. So again, when it comes to being consistent with the character at hand, the Blight is a scientist, and yet for being a scientist, he wastes a lot of motion here. This is a very drawn out Mori. Now, I do like the way he's kind of watching them, almost like he's curious as to what's going to happen after he stabs them with the serum. That part I actually kind of like, but I don't like the 2 stabs with the serum. I think 1 serum stab would have been fine. And honestly, for me, that big thing that puffs up out of their chest that he then bursts, that whole thing is just kind of unnecessary. I just kind of wish that maybe the survivor would have started writhing around, twitching all crazy like, and then the Blight would have put them down with the cane to the face, because the cane to the face is a solid send-off. That is a good kill, but unfortunately it is somewhat dampened by just a kind of needlessly over the top lead up to it that ultimately brings it down a peg. So here's the Blight's Mori. Rounding out the subpar category, we come in with number 20, the Demogorgon, who I gave a C+. So this one is not without things to love. In fact, we're well past the point of Moris without things to love, and I would say that really only Trappers is completely lacking in that regard, because even Wraith, I mentioned liking the little leg pull. So, you know, take these with a grain of salt, but in the case of the Demogorgon, I do think that the bad may kind of outweigh the good here. The final pose is cool. I like that. The roar is great that he does while doing the final pose. I just have some issues with it. So firstly, I don't want to penalize any Mori in this game for behavior's limitations, but the fact that the head remains attached to the body after the Demogorgon seems to tear it off is kind of odd, because while you could say, oh, well, you know, they don't mess with the character models after these. Look, I'm okay with that. I understand that, but don't make Moris that call to attention dismemberment. So that's kind of a bit of an issue for me. Also, I just think it's a little too similar to hags. They both get these very animalistic ways of killing survivors, and while Demogorgon's is a little more memorable, it's not much more memorable, and overall, I tend to defer to who did it first. So I do think the Demogorgon has a slightly better one than hag, but I wanted to knock it more points for being similar, because you can't really blame the hag for having a similar one, because hag was there first. So I'm going to knock Demogorgon for having a similar one to hag, and say that it's a fine Mori, it's fine, it's not great, but a lot of people do seem to like it, and as I always like to point out, just because I don't enjoy something doesn't mean that other people don't enjoy it. So if you're a big fan of Demogorgon's Mori, let me know in the comments, and I'll make sure to give that one a heart, because look, I'm always happy to hear that people are enjoying things, especially the Demodog. And speaking of which, enjoy this Mori. We have now moved into one of the two largest categories, that being the mediocre category. These are the Moris that have a lot going for them, but are usually knocked down a peg or two just by a complaint here, a complaint there, something I wish they would have done differently. But overall, these are pretty good, so I think you're going to like a lot of these, even if, as I mentioned, they're not perfect. We'll start with number 19, the Trickster, who I gave a B-. So this is a good use of the Trickster's eccentric personality. It's on display here. He's posing like he's on the runway. The knife, you know, the way he's throwing the knives, it's not done in a practical sense. He's doing it in a very showman way. That's not it. With a bunch of showmanship, right? You know, there are things to like there. I have a couple of issues. Firstly, what the Trickster's doing, you know, while he may be posing, there's not a lot happening here with the survivors. It's essentially just the Trickster using his power, which if you've played against the Trickster, you've been seeing that all match. So there's really nothing special there. And then also, this is maybe a petty reason to dislike it, but it's supposed to be such that he throws all the knives, then he throws an autographed picture of himself and a knife pins it to the survivor's body. But as you'll see, even in the footage I got, because I was really glad we only did one take on this and we actually got it, it doesn't always hit the picture. I don't know what's wrong with the physics there, but it doesn't always stick to the picture, which is kind of a wet fart of a way to end this one. It's a cool idea and it just doesn't always work out. So that's why he's at the bottom of the mediocre tier. But as promised, here is the Trickster's Mori. Coming in at number 18, we have the Nightmare, Freddy Krueger, who also got a B-. Now, this one gets massively penalized for Freddy not talking. And no, laughing doesn't matter. He laughs in his Mori, but he doesn't talk. And frankly, while I can understand that in the era that Dead by Daylight came out, they had not yet added their first talking character. That wouldn't come until Adiris, the Plague, I believe. I still feel like this was such a massive missed opportunity. Freddy has a famously loud mouth, and for him to not even talk in the Mori is shocking, because I don't have a problem with the fact that because of the era when he came out, that he doesn't talk, you know, when he gets pallet stunned or when he runs into a survivor or when he hooks somebody, you know, whatever it would be. I'm okay with that. I just really think he should have said something during the Mori. Now, what's good about it though, because that's a negative, but obviously if it's this high, there are things I like. And what I like is that it's a good recreation of one of the better kills from 2010's Nightmare on Elm Street, which, you know, I've gone on record, I didn't like the movie. I thought it was just a bad remake of the original with, it was just the original movie with worse kills, you know, terrible CGI instead of good practical effects. And, you know, maybe I thought that for the most part, they kind of ruined Nancy's character, so I didn't love the movie. But out of the kills in the movie, I thought that the one that they're referencing with this was actually one of the better ones, and it's also one of them that translates a little better to a Mori. So overall, pretty good recreation here. And I do like that Freddy mean mugs the camera after he gets the kill. That's pretty in character. That's pretty spot on for Frederick C. Krueger. So a nice little bit of personality there. Really, this one's just brought down by the fact that we don't get the line bitch in there, because you know it's Freddy. Freddy's got to call everyone a bitch. That's what he does. He doesn't do it here, and that's a real letdown. But as always, check out the Mori for yourself. See what you think. Coming in at number 17 is the one that is going to get me flamed in the comments. This is going to be the one that gets me in the most trouble. I guarantee you there is not going to be one that gets more of a "what in the heck were you thinking" than this one. But I'm going to stand by it. I'm going to say number 17, the Oni, who I gave a B-. Now, you may have been able to piece this one together in my earlier talks about how I am just not impressed with over violence, with uber violence. It loses its meaning to me at a certain point. And in the case of the Oni, his Mori is to the concept of Moris what Five Finger Death Punch is to the concept of metal music. It is this monster energy drinking person named Kyle who's just so over the top and "ooh yeah, I'm a badass." That's kind of the vibe I get from Onis. And look, don't get me wrong, Oni is a badass. I mean, guys, I have an Oni tattoo. I love the Oni. I think he's a great character and he is cool, but this is just so comically over the top. Now, I did do a little bit of research. I initially knocked at points for the fact that the survivor continues to yell after having their tongue ripped out, but you know what? Now Google thinks I'm a serial killer because I looked into it. Turns out you can actually yell without your tongue. So who knew? The more you know. But I mean, that's such a minor that's such a minor point to give it. It is lore accurate. I get it that Kazan was very aggressive, very evil human. And, I'll give it points for that. And it definitely has the wow factor. You can't watch this one for the first time without going, "Whew, wow." But this is what I would liken to Mortal Kombat fatalities, that the first time you watch them, you say, "Oh, that's brutal." But then after you've seen it a few times, it's just completely lost on you. Whereas there are some that are so brutal and you see them and every time you're like, "Ooh, yikes." No matter how many times you've seen it. And, it just never loses that air of it. But for me, Oni, the first time I saw it, I was like, wow, that's a very violent Mori. But as I saw it more and more, I just kind of grew bored with it because again, I go back to that analogy of like a guy named Kyle. It's like, okay, Kyle, what are we going to do with this Mori? It's like, okay, well, I want him to stab him with his katana. Okay, yeah, good. Stab with the katana. And then I want him to rip the tongue out. Okay, and then he's going to rip the tongue out. Sure, Kyle, sure. Anything else? Yeah, then I want him to crush the tongue with his hand. Okay, Kyle. We'll crush the tongue with, and then I want him to beat him with the whooping stick. Like, it's just crazy. I feel like Kyle needs to be institutionalized, and so too does whoever came up with this Mori. It's so over the top that it stops being impressive and it starts being comical. It's like the artist's backstory was made into a Mori. Does this mean I hate the Oni's Mori? No, I put it in the mediocre category. It's got some good and it's got some bad. I love that the Oni stabs them and props them up on his katana. That's kind of cool. I love that he tends to do the roar when he is performing the Mori. There are things to like. But on the whole, it's way too over the top, and I'm just not a big fan of it. So here's the Oni's Mori. Feel free to go to the comments now and let me hear about it. Coming in at number 16, we have Bubba the Cannibal, who I gave a B. And look, I realize this is one of those where if you go to most Mori ranking videos, which I actually didn't watch any in preparation for this because I didn't want to have my thoughts colored here. I've seen them in the past, but it was long enough ago that, I definitely can't really say for certain, oh, well, so-and-so made a video that ranked it here or there. But I feel like the Cannibal Bubba, we're going to call him Bubba from here on out, his Mori gets slept on, but honestly, it's pretty good. I love that Bubba stuns the survivors like they're cattle because it really speaks to how he views this whole process. Bubba has never been a malicious killer. He just kind of sees it like putting down cattle. And even if you don't want to go with that interpretation of the character, obviously in the movies, it's more that he's protecting his home turf and he's afraid of intruders, which by the way, most Texas Chainsaw films can be summed up by people, characters A, B, and C go to Texas. They see a home. They knock. Nobody answers the door. They go in the home, or as we like to call it in the legal business, breaking and entering. So there's a way to read these movies where Bubba is just a really aggressive and proactive defender of his home, who also has a small side hustle of making, you know, unique, customizable masks. So I don't know, but that's a little bit off the beaten path. I'm a big Bubba fan. I think he's great. But look, this is a good encapsulation of the character. I like, as I mentioned, he uses the cattle hammer to hit them over the head and stun them, disorient them. That's good. The chainsaw through the chest is pretty cool. A good use of the chainsaw dance, by the way, where he throws it up in the air and he does the Bubba noises and all that. That's pretty great. And I actually like that the simple approach they take here seems to harken back to the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which was not an over-the-top violent film in and of itself. It was almost a bloodless film, in fact. So actually, I think this one's a pretty good representation of Bubba, and overall, it's a pretty good Mori. Check it out. Coming in at number 15, we have the Spirit. I gave Spirit a B. So this is one of the few times where I think overkill works in a Mori's favor. So when you look at the Spirit, this was a young girl who was murdered by her own father. She was given this chance, you know, hey, work for me and I will give you your vengeance. So she's coming at this very emotionally. I love the little scream she does. I don't know if it's one of joy, if it's one of frustration, anger, whatever it is. It just kind of works. It's good. It's a good representation of her character, and honestly, this one is not a complex kill. It's a stab through the back, which does look pretty cool. It always gives me the I do kind of get those vibes of like, sorry, you know, forgive me, master, but I must go all out just this once. I kind of like it. Like anytime I see a katana going through the back like that, like that's kind of great. That's kind of funny. But overall, it is a really, really cool one. And again, it's simple, it's brutal, and it fits the character. Honestly, there's really not a whole lot to complain about with this one. It would be higher up if there weren't better Moris ahead. I don't have a lot that I disliked about this one. Check it out yourselves. Coming in at number 14, we have the Twins, who I give a B to, but with a very, very important caveat, that being that you use Victor. Because, in case you didn't know, the Twins actually have two Moris, one to account for when Victor is not there, and one that uses Victor. So, I am assuming you are using the Victor one. If you don't use the Victor one, drop this one down quite a few spots, because at that point, you know, I mean, it's still cool that Charlotte's killing people with a sickle, which is a kind of cool choice in weapon, but it's a lot cooler with Victor. So I think this one is great because of the Victor-Charlotte dynamic. So you have Big Sis, who is, by the way, shockingly violent. Like, I don't think this one gets enough credit for just how brutal it is. So she cuts the survivors down behind their knees so they drop down to the ground, and then she slashes their necks from behind, which, I mean, that, oh my gosh, you're killing them pretty instantly with that. But then she lets loose little Victor, who runs in and he screams and he bites and all that, and he gets to act like he made the kill. It's kind of great. It's really just, it's almost fun. Like, it's disturbing, but it's kind of funny in its own right. And overall, I think this is a pretty solid Mori. Have a look for yourselves and see what you think. At number 13, we have the final one in the mediocre category, and I gave that distinction to the Doctor, who got the only B+ of the bunch. Now, let's go in and get the negative out of the way immediately. That being that, honestly, this is not nearly as brutal as what one might expect from Herman Carter. His whole character is based on brutality and evil and torture, and honestly, he gives them a pretty quick death with survivors, that is. He gives survivors a pretty quick death with his Mori. So could that be more violent? Yeah, but I don't want to be a hypocrite. I've also said that over violence is one of those things that I'm not looking for. Now, in the case of the Doctor, his whole character is over violence, so you could argue that, oh, this would have been the one time, you know, kind of like with the Spirit, where it's like, oh, this is the one time you should have done it. But all of that to say, that doesn't really matter to me a whole lot. I still think it's a really just genuinely cool use of the Doctor's electricity. I really love the face reveal at the end where he turns them over and they're smoking out of the eyes, and you can tell that they just essentially got defibrillated on both sides of their head. Like, it's good. It's a good Mori. I like this Mori. The only way they could have made it better is if they had done like what's the one Friday the 13th film where the guy gets electrocuted and his head just explodes. I think it was a Friday the 13th film. Maybe it wasn't. It's been a minute. But anyway, I mean, obviously that'd be great, but we already know behavior does not dismember the survivors. They only put them on giant meat hooks and sacrifice them to, to these monstrous spiders in the sky. So, much more tame. But all of that to say, I do like the Doctor's Mori, and I think you will too. Check it out. We now move into the good section. From here on out, these are the Moris where I start having fewer and fewer complaints. And honestly, all of these behaviors should be pretty proud of them. They're pretty good. So, number 12, we have the Legion with an A-. Now, look. I know Legion fans are very vocal about how much they love Legion, how much they love everything Legion. They love the power. They love the look. They love the new soundtrack, right? The new chase music, which, by the way, I do too. It's great. It's the only reason I can survive the fact that I'm facing like 20 legions a day now. Please play somebody else. But this Mori is good. It is not top 5. And I hear a lot of people put it up there. It is not top 5. I know how much Legion fans love their character, but hear me out on this one. This one would be higher, but I had to weigh it down a little bit because of the sheer ridiculousness of the Legion besting about half of the roster. Ask yourselves realistically, can Susie really wrestle David King to the ground? David King, per the lore, is a rugby player. David King is a bare-knuckle brawler. David King is massive. Bill is a war vet who I think fought in Vietnam, right? That's the war that it's at least implied he fought in. Are we really going to say that a Nam vet is being wrestled to the floor by like the edgy kids from high school? Like, that hurts the Mori in my view. That is the only thing that I really have against it, is it's just so laughable to me that especially Susie, more than Julie, Frank, or Joey, could like wrestle half of the roster down and kill them. Like, this isn't a surprise stab to the back, because people will say, oh, but a knife is a great equalizer. Yeah, most of the time when a stabbing occurs, you don't know you're about to be stabbed. But the case is pretty clear here that they're clearly about to be stabbed. They know what's going on. And I just kind of have this sneaking suspicion that most of them, like, you're telling me Jill Valentine can fend off Nemesis, but she can't fend off like the Slipknot season ticket holders? Are you kidding me? That's the only real issue I have with it, though. I actually really, really like this Mori. I do like that it seems like behavior was also aware of that, so it's the only Mori where survivors seem to get a sense of false hope. Like, they might overpower, they might escape before they are brought down. I like the little kind of tussle you get between the Legion member and the survivors. The final chest stab is excruciating to watch. It's almost like they're killing a very large animal, the way they put it in and they pull it down. Oh my gosh, it's painful to watch. It's a good Mori. In fact, I think really the only other knock I would have on it is it would have been cooler if they had incorporated all 4 Legion members, which, by the way, I think would be the coolest thing, because then you would get rid of that critique I have. If you had it where, Joey, Frank, Susie, Julie, they all come out and they're all stabbing from every direction. Like, that would be, first off, kind of claustrophobic, and secondly, believable. It'd be believable that 4 knives defeat any survivor on that roster. So, I don't know. It sounds like I don't like it. I know I complained about it more than I praised it, but it's a good Mori. It's a visually appealing Mori, and I do like it. Check it out. Coming in at number 11, we have one that consistently climbed up as I was going. Every time I thought I knew where I was going to put this one, I realized, no, I kind of like it more than this one. No, I kind of like it more than that one. So this is The Plague, who I gave an A-. And I don't know if I said it last time, I gave Legion an A- as well. So if I didn't say that, I do apologize, but Plague and Legion both get an A-. And Plague really gets her ranking. She earns it. And the reason that it kept going up for me is because it is so character rich. This is one that really screams Adiris. I love the putting the arms out to the gods, still making some kind of sacrifice, it seems, even though now it may be more to the entity than to the Assyrian gods that she was originally praising. Death by Vomit is a truly terrifying way to go. I like that there's variation in it, that it can be the green or the red vomit. Both of those are equally gross, and it looks pretty violent. I love the little flick at the end. She just kind of flicks them away, flicking away the Fliegen. It's kind of nice. It's a good Mori. I really feel like this one kind of maybe flies under the radar a little bit, but it's a pretty solid Mori. And even now, I'm tempted to put it higher, but I've already raised it up a lot, so we're gonna leave it at 11. It gets an A-. It's a good Mori. Give it a watch. At number 10, we have Sally Smithson, the nurse. And I always say her name because I just love the alliteration. It's fun. She also gets an A-. You're going to notice that A-s are kind of the norm in this good category. So what do I like about the nurse's Mori? Firstly, I like that it's almost bloodless. That's pretty unique. If you want to name the Moris that are bloodless, I think there are two. Yeah, two, because I was going to say Demogorgon, but at the very end, it punches one of its claws into the survivor and blood gushes out. So yeah, I think you have two bloodless ones, and that's kind of unique in Dead by Daylight to have a bloodless Mori. But the reason that I like that it's bloodless is not because I want to make sure it's clear. I don't criticize the uber violent ones and praise the bloodless ones because I have some puritanical views on we can't have violence in video games. It's because I like it when violence is used well, when it's a measured use of violence. And for the nurse, it doesn't make sense that she would hack them all up into little pieces, kind of like with a chainsaw or something. No, it's a lot more reasonable to think that a serial strangler would strangle her victims. And that's exactly what she does. The neck break sound is really, really kind of violent in its own way. And then that final caress is just great. That final caress she gives them on the way out is a really chilling detail to add. And it kind of hints back to that thing that lore-wise, the nurse seems to think she's doing people a favor when she murders them. She seems to think that, good, I've saved you from the pains of this world. And obviously that's a very messed up way to view things, but it is also very creepy, which is good. She's a serial killer. You want her to be creepy. It actually kind of gives her Black Bride vibes for me, if you've seen Insidious 2 or 1. In both of them. But yeah, honestly, I really like this one. I think it's a very, very solid Mori. And I don't know. I would welcome more bloodless Moris in the future, so long as they could be as intentional as that of the nurse. Coming in at number 11, we have the Onryo, who I gave an A-. So Sadako's Mori kind of makes me cringe, which I think is a good thing. I think that's a good thing. I think that is a point of praise, but I'm not sure. It definitely makes me cringe. The breaking of the leg in particular is just so violent. And by the way, in case you're curious, when I talk about Sadako, we are talking about an actual Mori and not her executing a survivor on the spot because they reached maximum. What is it? Maximum. It's like exposure or something. Condemned. Maximum condemned status. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about her actual Mori, not just where she stops their hearts, which, by the way, is actually a pretty good kill in and of itself. In the case of this one, the breaking the leg and the breaking the arm, that's very violent. I do kind of knock it a little bit because break the leg, break the arm, and then stop the heart. It just feels like you could have just stopped the heart. It's not like they could resist as is. So a little over the top there, but I kind of give it a pass because it's just so entertaining in its own way. And again, I realize if you're a big fan of the Oni's Mori, you might come in, you might say, hey, wait, but this is hypocrisy. And I realize that, yeah, people are inconsistent. His over the top kill doesn't really do it for me. Sadako's kind of does, if you disagree, you disagree, and I'm open to that idea. But for me personally, I think that Sadako really, she really just, I don't know, like, firstly, she's a child, right? Or not a child. I think she's 18, canonically, 18 or somewhere in that range. Yeah, so I don't know. I think that she's young, and she's got all this anger at her situation, and she's taking it out in any way she can. And it's wrong, by the way. I'm not defending it, but I'm saying she's letting that anger out. So it kind of makes sense. I'm not going to get into a lore debate of Sadako versus Kazan, but either way, Sadako's got a really good one. I love the final stink eye at the end. That's really funny. I think it was meant to be more disturbing, but I find it very humorous. I like it. And it's a very, very good Mori. Coming in at number 8, we have another licensed property, this one being Pyramid Head, the Executioner, who I gave another A-. Now, in the case of Pyramid Head, I adore that he lifts the survivors with one hand, like he's the Undertaker or the Demon Kane, and he's about to choke slam them. That's great. I wish he would have gone on with that. I wish he would have just like carried on, followed through, choke slammed them, go for the pin. He is the WWE champion. But obviously they didn't go it that way for whatever reason. But I like that he lifts them up with the one hand. It's so effortless. It's so sinister in its own way too. I also really like how the limbs of the survivors are kind of mangled when he puts the barbed wire cage around them, which by the way, ooh, that would hurt. That would really hurt. Really the only complaint I have with Pyramid Heads, Mori, is that final turn of the knife is just, it's a bit underwhelming, isn't it? Like, it's not really, the whole thing is so intimidating and violent up to that point, and then he just kind of turns his knife almost like he's unlocking a door. Like, it's just not super memorable in that regard, but everything else about it is great. And if they had ended it on a little bit of a higher note, it easily would have been in the great category instead of the good. But as it is, it's still a good one, and I really like this one. At number 7, we have the Cenobite. Pinhead, Chatterer, they both get an A. This is our first A, the highest score yet. So when it comes to the Cenobite, I want to give credit to their Mori for being the only one that doesn't kill the survivor. Instead, he just takes them to Brazil and they're never heard from again, presumably. So I am curious lore-wise, did he actually take them out of the entity's realm? Or did he just take them back to the campfire? But if he did that, wouldn't the entity kind of be mad because he didn't sacrifice them? Like, I don't know. I think lore-wise that opens up all kinds of questions, but from a gameplay perspective, it looks really cool. It's very fitting for the Cenobites. I love that it's a callback to the Jesus Wept scene from Hellraiser, even though I think that, look, I love Hellraiser. I've never really understood that scene. Like, why do you say that there? That just doesn't make a world of sense within the context of the story. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of religious symbolism in Hellraiser, but in particular, I don't know. Look, maybe I'm just too stupid. Maybe I didn't understand Hellraiser as much as I thought I did. I love the movie. It's a great movie. And I like that they reference the scene. The scene itself is kind of odd. But anyway, those hooks look incredibly painful. It is such a great, almost the visual of your favorite survivor having hooks pulling their face apart. That is so gnarly. That is so violent. So gross, really. So gross. But it's really good. And then obviously, you have the Cenobite who sends the survivor away to a realm where pleasure and pain intertwine. It's great. It's a really, really great Mori, and it's one I am always happy to have performed on me. The last of the good Moris, we have the Artist, who I gave an A to as well. Artist has a lot of things going for her in her Mori. So firstly, I like that she actually moves kind of in a bird-like fashion. That's cool to see because she doesn't really do that at any other point in time. You know, she makes bird noises, but she doesn't really move like a bird until she does her Mori and she launches on top of the survivor. And it's kind of cool to see. I do like that. I love the use of the ink. I think it's great that she kind of swallows their face, pulls the crow out, but then where it really wins me over is the crows eating and pecking away at the dead body of the survivor. I love that the body is twitching. It's a very effective kill that doesn't have to rely on over-the-top violence to make its point. It's still disturbing, plenty disturbing on its own, and I think that's really good. So overall, that is a great one to end the good ones on. Artist was a really, really special Mori. And now we've reached my favorite part of the video. This is the great section. Now, this one's kind of big because I want you to know I struggled so much to know where to put these 5 survivors. And by the way, it just kind of worked out that it was the top 5. It wasn't like I set it out to say, okay, well, we're going to have the top 5 be the greats. I just thought they kind of stood above the rest as the best Moris in the game. Sometimes life works out like that. So these, consider them 5 Moris that you could really rearrange in any way. On any given day, I might put a different one at number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. They're all really, really high quality, and I love them all. First amongst these, coming in at number 5, is the Nemesis, who I gave an A+. All of them from here on out get A+. So Nemesis should have gotten an A++ just for the Stars voice line alone. They did not have to include that, but they did, and I love it. I love hearing Nemi say Stars. That is so good. In fact, it's so good that while I was recording this video, we used Jeff for every Mori except Nemesis, because for Nemesis, we wanted to use Joe Valentine, so we got the Stars line. It is so good. It is so good. Such a nice little touch. Also nice is that stomp. I love the way that Nemesis uses the tentacle, which actually I think the tentacle itself is Nemesis with a tyrant body, but you get the point. We call the body Nemesis. It uses the tentacle to pull the survivor up, only to then bring that massive combat boot down on the head. And again, this is where it's a shame that the head looks the same after the Mori, because it would look so much cooler if it was like in Halloween 2018, spoiler, when Michael Myers steps on Sartain's head and just turns it to goo. If we could have an effect like that, that'd be great, but obviously that's not something that Behavior is interested in adding to the game, so whatever. Again, I'm trying really hard not to knock Moris for the fact that they do all these things to survivors, but then the bodies look like exactly the same. So overall, this one's great. That stomp alone wins it, but oh man, that Stars, that really pushes it over the top. Give it a look, you're gonna love it. Coming in at number 4, we have the one that would be a lot of people's number 1. I realize that. This is the one that a lot of people would put higher than any other Mori, and I understand why. I considered putting it number 1. That is the Ghostface, or as we call him in the civilized world, Ghostface. This is a fantastic Mori, and it gives a great use of the backstory. So I mentioned that I want them to be character accurate, and I think that it's really, really good use of the backstory of this particular Ghostface. Because look, I understand that Ghostface is more synonymous as a character with phones than with cameras. However, I would argue that the lore for the DBD Ghostface, which again is not one of the Ghostfaces from the movies, this is a new person donning the mask. This one is a little more into the stalking aspect of things, so cameras are a massive part of that. And yeah, I think that's a great use of it. I love that it encourages other survivors to get in on the fun and photobomb the picture. That's great, that's funny, that's a good time. Overall, this one is both disturbing and humorous, which I think is a great line to walk for these. I think it's great when a Mori can remember that the point of a Mori is to be a little silly. It's kind of, again, I would liken them to Mortal Kombat fatalities. Like, the more that you feel like a Mori or a fatality is taking itself really seriously, the more that I'm kind of turned off from it. So if they're having some fun with it, I think that's great. And they were clearly having fun with the Ghostface Mori. So give that a look. You've probably seen it a million times, but it really never gets old. we now enter the top 3, and this is the part where I get accused of being biased. And by the way, I am. I put the clown at number 3 with an A+. So this one does everything right. This is pretty much a perfect Mori. There's nothing about this one I would change. There is really nothing I would change about this one as I think about it. So I love the neck break. The neck break is such a great start to it. It is the clown using his immense size as a weapon. And that's good. That is a good detail. But then everything about this Mori, starting with that and going through to the end, is so character specific. Nobody else could have this Mori and it make any sense. And it's not because of a power, right? It's not because of a power where you could say the same thing for anybody else that's like, okay, well, they were using their power. Clearly nobody else could do it. You know, like Plague with the vomit. No, I'm saying from a character perspective, nobody else would do these things. The neck break, maybe, even then you've cut out a lot of the roster. But the cutting the finger off, giving it a big old suckle, and moaning, ooh, it's so unsettling. It's so perfect for the clown, for this creepy character. But by the way, I think the clown might be the least redeemable killer in the game. He is evil as evil gets, and he knows it. He does not have any qualms about it. Even somebody like Michael, you could always argue, does Michael even believe in right and wrong? The clown knows what he's doing is wrong, but he doesn't care because he gets satisfaction out of it, and he's evil. And this really is a great Mori to highlight that, while also keeping that absurdist line that I tend to enjoy with Moris, with the moan, right? The moan is so silly, so gross, but disturbing, right? It's funny in its own way, but disturbing. And I think that's a great line to toe, as I've mentioned a few times. Also, in terms of uniqueness, I do really like that he cuts off different fingers for different survivors, and I think that's kind of a nice detail. So overall, really, really great Mori, and I'm kind of disappointed that I could even see anyone arguing, oh, this is a mediocre one. I really hope nobody says it. You know, say it if you feel it, state your case, but I think this one's perfect, and it's one of my favorite things about maining the clown is this Mori. So give it a look, praise it in the comments below. Let me hear it. Next up, we have the Deathslinger, who I put as an A+. Again, they're all A+ from here on out. And man, what I really think with this one, what it really does well is pacing. There's a sense of drama to this one. You are waiting for that gunshot to go off. And when it does, it's kind of jarring. It's really well used there. I really think that this one is a good utilization of what I would call functional brutality. It's not over the top. It's very controlled. It's controlled chaos. It's functional brutality. It is a Mori that's kind of contained, but still very, very violent and still very character specific. Obviously, using the Redeemer is one of those things that, oh, if they use a gun, well, that's the Deathslinger. Even though, I mean, I guess, yeah, clearly that's, when I was talking about clown, it was more of a character thing. Yeah, sure, the Redeemer, that's the Deathslinger's power. You know, I get it, but this is such a great one. I love the image of the survivor being slumped over dead after having had the Redeemer fire through them from behind. Just such a really quality visual there, and the fact that he just kind of kicks him over. I'm done with you. You're done. I'm done. I've got my kill. You know, it's the little things about this one that I think really elevate it. But as great as the little things are, and as much as they're what ultimately elevate it, let's not look away from the big things, which is that grandiose firing of the harpoon through the survivor. That's fantastic. That is really, really good. And there is a case to be made that this is the best Mori in the game, but I don't think it is. Still, give it a look. Finally, we come to the number 1 position, and I think most of you are well enough aware of who all is in the roster to know who this means I'm giving it to. And I'm aware this is probably not a popular pick to be number 1. I'm aware this is probably one that people like, but don't even come close to liking enough to put it number 1. But it's my list. It's my list. And I think this one's an amazingly perfect Mori. No changes necessary. Not now, not ever. That is number 1, the shape, Michael Myers. A++++. This one's great. So what makes this one good? Well, we talk about being character specific, and Michael is in his element here. He lifts the survivor up with his immense strength. He holds them with only one hand. He breathes deeply. You hear it hitting that mask. It's the... But you don't know what he's feeling. You never know what Michael's feeling as he gets the kill. It's one of the things that makes him so fascinating as a villain. Is it joy? Is it relief? Is it sexual? We don't know. And speaking of which, there is this intimacy to his kill. There is intimacy intermingled with malice. And it really comes together to make a special Mori. I think this one is a fantastic kill. I'm just kind of in love with it. I think it's great. I am a massive fan of this Mori. I love that the survivors fight back, but their efforts become more and more feeble as time goes on. And then Michael just tosses them to the ground. And that's one of the things about this Mori that works so well. Michael tosses them to the ground, and you know he is never going to think about them again, because that's not how Michael works. He doesn't care about his victims. He doesn't view them as victims. He probably doesn't even view them as people. Michael is embodied so well in this one Mori, and behavior should really pat themselves on the back for doing one that was able to both be a reference to the Bob kill. At least I would imagine that's what they were going for, is a bit of a nod to, when Bob gets pinned to the wall. It's not entirely dissimilar, though it's not a carbon copy either. So there was creativity involved, there was a callback involved. The whole thing was really, really great, and to me, it's the perfect Mori. But, let me take a deep breath, because that is enough speaking on my part. This video went way over the time I thought it was going to, but you know what? It was fun. I enjoyed making it. And if you enjoyed watching it, again, please do leave a like. It really does help. But again, that's going to do it for me. Please comment down below. Let me know. What did I get wrong? What did I get right? What are your rankings? What's your favorite Mori? Tell me your favorite Mori. You don't have to tell me your least favorite. You don't have to tell me why it's Trapper or Wraith. But, Trapper, Wraith, Pig, Billy, whatever it is. I want to hear your favorite. What's your favorite? Why is it your favorite? What would you do to change the ones you don't like? Just let's talk Moris. Let's talk Moris, guys. I love Moris. I'm so glad they're still part of the game. And I'm so glad that they're not such a toxic part of the game anymore. Now, they're just for fun, and we play the game for fun. Fun is a good thing. Speaking of fun, I have fun over on Twitch. The viewers have fun. Das_food. Come have fun with us. But that's going to do it for me. I have been Das Food. I've been talking for too long. I am ready to go get a drink of water. And until next time, bye, friends.
I've been dreaming on in my head like I've seen it. A life worth living is a life with meaning. I'll do what I love till my heart stops beating. I'm feeding this demon. Got a taste, can't erase bitterness in my